Okay, Lynn.
Well, welcome everybody. We're glad you're here tonight, and we're thankful to Nancy for being here, and we're excited to hear about her book. So our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift of state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. HPH goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. HPH affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at all HPH meetings is voluntary. All discussions that take place at affiliate-led meetings are confidential. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Zoom meetings run by HPH leadership are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest speakers and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of HPH meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members. So we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. So thank you, Carol.
Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. Well, I'm excited to introduce Nancy. She's a shining light parent, and I'm going to start by reading her bio. I am the mother to 4 incredible children, Katie, Maggie, Will, and Joe. Both of my sons left this earth 2 years apart at age 26. Will passed from an accidental overdose in 2016, and Joe from a car accident in 2018 on the day of his sister's wedding. To say this seemed beyond comprehension is an understatement. Armed with the clear sense my boys could not possibly be just gone, I began a fervent search which led me to Helping Parents Heal with all of its compassion and collective wisdom. I read many books, cultivated tools, and continue to this day the spiritual journey which has led me to know our relationship continues. I currently live in the Miller neighborhood of Gary, Indiana, at the southernmost part of Lake Michigan. After 30 plus years raising a family in the Chicago suburb of Riverside and retiring from a career as a pediatric occupational therapist, I've had the good fortune of creating visual art and more recently writing, having published 2 books related to the passing of my boys. I enjoyed walking the Indiana dunes with partner Morrow and spending time with my beautiful children, grandchildren, beloved cats, and backyard chickens. More information about art and books can be found at nancyhejna.com, and Lynn will put that in the chat box. Welcome, Nancy. We are so happy to have you here. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your beautiful family and the sign that inspired the name of your book, Rainbow Hair?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. This is just amazing. And I'm really excited to share the book with you and to answer any questions that you might have. It's just phenomenal to be able to speak to this group that has helped me so much. So the Hejna family, as Carol was saying, I have 4 children, 2 Earthside and 2 on the other side. And my oldest daughter was born in 1985, and the second one came along in 1986, so very close together. And then 4 years later came Will in 1990 and Joey in 1992. And I always say that had the boys been born first, I would only have 2, because I never would have taken any more chances on having any more boys, because they were a very different ball of wax. So after these 2 quiet girls came these rambunctious boys, and our family was complete. And we lived this idyllic life in the suburbs of Chicago for many, many years. 2016, my oldest son passed from a heroin overdose. He struggled for about 10 years with substance use disorder, complicated by anxiety and depression, and it's always complicated by something. That's never, the first thing that comes along. And he never really got a grip on that particular illness. So we were on that path with him for 10 years, from age 16 to age 26. He was an amazing kid in spite of it. And he accomplished a lot in those years. But when he passed, we had many close calls. So when it happened, it was not necessarily a surprise. It was always a possibility. Devastating nevertheless, but we were pretty exhausted at that point. And I kind of retreated after his passing. We found an amazing bunch of his writing, and it led to all of this insight into how he viewed himself within his illness and how he came to terms with it. And there was some beautiful poetry in there. And it was a life-changing experience to read this and really figure out what was going on within him. And as a response, I started writing, and I never envisioned myself as a writer. It was really my own process, and it ended up being a manuscript with poetry, and I'd never written a poem before. And I didn't know what I was going to do with that. However, I had a very creative friend, visual artist herself and graphic designer, and she read it, Susan Ken, and said, I know what to do with this. And she turned it into this gorgeous visual book, and we self-published it. It has a lot of my visual art as a background. We didn't know what we were doing, but we self-published it just to have for friends and family, and really any other family who had kind of been on that particular journey, to see kind of what it was like within a family dealing with it, and to understand the mind of somebody who actually lived it. And I've heard that it has been helpful, and I'm happy to send this out to anybody who might find it useful. Okay, so that 2016, we're recovering from that. My oldest daughter in 2017 got engaged. It was an amazingly beautiful distraction from all of that we had gone through. Wedding planned, Northern Michigan, where my ex-husband was living at the time up near Traverse City. My youngest son, Joey, was living with him also at that time. And so it was planned there, small event, close friends and family. We're all up there getting ready for the wedding. My son Joey, who was 6'3" redhead, friend to everybody, just this big bundle of energy, was devastated by his brother's death. They were very close, but very happy to be part of this joyful event. He was the transportation for the wedding party. He was in it. And we're all up there getting ready. And the morning of the wedding, as we're kind of sorting things out, he decided that he needed to go back home, which is about a half hour away, to get something. And so I gave him the keys to my car, which was this tiny little car, a little Honda Fit. He didn't have his car there at the time. And so he took off to do that. And then the rest of us were, the whole makeup, hair, and all of that wonderful process. And all of a sudden, we're looking at our watches and thinking, where's Joey? He's not back yet. And it's late, and then it's getting later, and we're getting very concerned. Can't reach him by phone. And it just, the day is progressing. We're getting closer to the event. One of my daughter's friends, who was a physician, said, I'm just going to start calling around. And so she called a couple of hospitals in the area, and they said that there had been a car accident, but there were only minor injuries. So we kind of crossed that off the list. We just kept going. And so he's still not there. We had to scramble to figure out transportation. We're on the way to the wedding venue, and we got the call. And it actually came, it was interesting because my phone rang, and then right after, as I was talking to this detective that was actually from Northwest Indiana, they traced me through my car registration. I get a call from my ex-husband, and they had reached him. Joey had been killed instantly in that car accident, head-on collision. And they know that the impact was so major that they're sure that he passed instantly. There was no suffering, and they didn't think it was his fault. They felt from witness accounts that he had been forced into traffic. And at that point, that explained what was going on. After I started breathing again, and he said, "There's nothing that you can do. There's nothing that you need to do right now." And we just said, we got to keep going. And at that point, we really had to decide, what are we going to do? And everybody had arrived, being seated for this wedding. It's just like 4 of us who knew at that point. My daughters didn't know. Nobody else in the wedding party knew. And we decided that we just had to continue and let the ceremony at least play out. And then we would have to decide what to do. And I don't know from where the sort of autopilot feeling came over me, but it did. And I think we've all been in that situation where you don't have a choice. You just kind of have to put all of the emotion aside for now, and you just go. And you do it because you've got other kids, or you have other things that you need to do. And so that was kind of the mode that I was in. So it was a beautiful ceremony, even though everybody, in the back of their mind, they were curious about where Joy was. After the ceremony, pictures are being taken. Nobody knows yet. It's still this small group that knows what's taken place. And the reception's to be in this beautiful barn. And in the lower level where everybody was getting ready, my middle daughter, Maggie, was watching my step grandson. Adam has 2 boys, and he's 4. This is Elliot. He's 4 years old, and they're just hanging out because Elliot's done with photos and there's nothing he can do. So he's just sort of fidgeting around and sitting there. And all of a sudden, Maggie looks over, and he's just kind of staring off into the middle of the space there. And it's like, "Well, Elliot, what's going on with you?" And he's like, "Well, we have to go find my friend." And Maggie's like, "Okay, well, let's go." And thinking there's a bunch of kids here. It must be one of those. What does he look like? Let's go find him. And he says, "Well, he doesn't really have a face, and he's got rainbow hair." And Maggie was like, "Okay, well, let's go try and find him." She's pretty confused. And he said, "Well, we can't because he's died." And she didn't know at that point that Joy had passed. Elliot didn't know. She later, that day, after all of this settled down, and we had, told the group, and it had turned into this amazing kind of wake for Joey in the middle of this wedding. She later told us that, and we realized that was our very first sign. And they came in force after that. There was another real rainbow that happened later in the afternoon, and rainbows just kept coming, and especially for my oldest daughter, Katie. And anybody who was there that day will never forget it, because it was pretty much the most intense experience that you can possibly imagine. So, as a result of that, my daughter at one point, months later, said, "I just want you to write the day, just write it down." And it became a short essay. And then my good friend Susan Ken again read it and said, "Well, I think there's a book here." And it was as if a little faucet had been turned on, and it just started coming. And couple year, it really took 3 years. It was a 3-year project, and
Wow.
here it is. So rainbow
Wow.
hair.
when
Yeah.
I read that in the book, and I read that Elliot had said that, and because I didn't know where the title came from, it just gave me chills. It just gave me chills. So,
Yeah. And then the rainbows. I mean,
mhm.
it was all tied together. It was really amazing. And Elliot doesn't remember now. He doesn't remember that. But this recent, he's 9 now. So he, we showed him that he's in the book, his photos in the book. And he's like, well, am I a main character? And I was like, your contributions are very important, Elliot. But,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I have found on this journey that I've been on, that, most of the parents I meet so many parents, when they describe their kids, and it doesn't matter, regardless of how the kids passed away, whether it was,
Mhm.
a drug overdose, or whether even if they had taken their own lives, that so many of these kids, I know my son and so many of my friends' sons, they're just so different. I mean, they're so special, their personalities, I always said from the time Tyler was little, it was just he was special. Can you describe your boys' personalities? I mean, were they very much alike, but very different? But just tell us a little bit about the boys.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. And I love this question because I found that too, just in hearing as a caring listener and just hearing people tell their stories, that yes, this is a very unique group. And I think my sons fit right in. And yes, they were very different in terms of their personality, but I'd say in terms of how they thought about things and what deep thinkers they were, I mean, it was very unusual for teenage boys and young 20-something boys to sit around and just contemplate the universe. And then they would do that. And they also were very intent on helping others. They very much, that was their goal. My youngest son's blurb on his computer, when he would open it, it just said, keep doing your stupid projects. You're going to help the world someday. That was his mantra. And then Will, he wanted to go into healthcare to serve others. They, just were kind. They were very kind and non-judgmental, both of them, in spite of how different they were in terms of their personality. But yeah, I don't know. I think at least Joey, I don't know. I think part of him had some sense that he wasn't going to be here that long. He could never envision himself as as a mature adult, even though he wanted it desperately. He wanted family. He wanted to be, that kind of traditional life. So on more than one occasion, he said, I don't think that's going to happen for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
I believe their souls know. So, and that's why they're so evolved, that, they feel so much, and they're very selfless, and they're all about, I know Tyler was like that, just helping others. And that's been my experience with, oh my goodness, so many parents I've talked to as a caring listener. They're just like, no, but he was everybody's best friend, or she was everybody's best friend. I just hear it over and over because they are special. Which is why they don't need to be here. They've completed what they need to do. That's what I always say.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Yeah, absolutely.
And Nancy, you're a caring listener as well, which I think is amazing, amazing. So you also talked about your book about church hopping and even agnostic years in college. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that, and then what kind of changed when your mother passed away?
Sure. Yeah. And it's been kind of a stop and go kind of spiritual journey for me. And I don't know where it came from, but I've always, even as a kid, I've always had the sense that we're part of something. We're supposed to be part of a spiritual evolution of some kind. And that we need to leave this place better than we found it. And I'm not sure where that came from. I was a pretty shy, introspective kid, did a lot of reading. I don't know if that was part of it. And did go to different Protestant churches as a kid. And then in high school, I really kind of was a seeker. just trying to figure it out. And some of it was kind of humorous, just going to different friends' churches. And I always felt that there were pieces that aligned with kind of what I felt, but nothing that really satisfied how I viewed our connection with the universe. And so I kind of put it aside, especially in college. I kind of put it away. I still kept reading things and kind of looking for answers, and in all facets of reading, including like Shirley MacLaine. Some of it was pretty out there, but it was sort of like I was just kind of picking and choosing and filing it away. And then my mom died, and she died when she was 71, and I was pretty young. I was like early 40s. My kids were really little at that time. And I had a complicated relationship with her, and it really shook my world. I was at that time kind of the traditional suburban housewife, kind of following the model of my mother-in-law, and a lot of volunteer work. And, I didn't really have my own career yet. And I had kind of lost a lot of who I was, I think, at that point. And it was the first time, my mother's passing and the events around it, really the first time that I ever experienced synchronistic events in a way that I really felt that something was being orchestrated. I was not in charge of this. These things were just falling in line in a way that I couldn't explain, other than somebody's organizing this. And then I also had a dream visit from her right after she passed. I can still see it today. All of those things just kind of like blew me open to a certain degree. And I even know a lot of us here have experienced it, where your whole reality is heightened. Everything has a different kind of meaning. You're seeing things in a completely different way. And it really kind of led to me really assessing kind of where I was going with my own life. And I changed a lot. I changed a lot internally. It was kind of scary, and it really was scary to my husband at the time. He didn't understand what was going on, and it was really hard for me to explain that I felt like I needed to be on somewhat of a different path. We kind of patched things up and tried to limp along, and it didn't, it only lasted so long. But at that point, I kind of made a commitment to being more creative. I literally heard, and I have not, this has only happened a couple of times, but really a directive, like people have these directives that you're driving, it's like turn right. And if they didn't, they would have had the accident. I had this directive that said, you must paint, literally, you must make art. And that was something that I had put away years and years ago. And I started doing that. And that led to all the people that are now in my life that became this support, and to this opening kind of in this different path. I mean, outwardly it didn't look so different, but inwardly it was very different. And so that was
what did your mom say to you in your dream?
In my dream, she
Yeah.
kind of, it was like an encouragement. It was sort of like, okay, keep going, keep doing this.
Yes.
keep doing your thing. I'm okay. And she looked, as we've had these things described before, she was like in her 30s and beautiful, and the person that I remembered as a healthy person. And she, since then, I mean, she's become a very, very powerful kind of teacher for me. I kind of realize who she is in my bigger cosmic life. She's been very, very important. Yeah.
And then also, I know that, then it's more expected when our parents die. So you did kind of not, I mean, you were on the spiritual path, but you had also said that it was really Joey's passing, it was your second boy who had transitioned, that really put you back on that path, not Will's. And you want to touch on that a little bit briefly?
Yeah. And it was, I think because, as I mentioned a little bit before, because I had kind of already rehearsed Will's passing a number of times. He had 5 overdoses and 3 suicide attempts in a span of, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. That's a lot. And each time he came out of it. And so we kind of assumed that he always would, but finally that the one time he did not. But it wasn't, I don't know, somehow I kind of had mapped that out for myself, and I just needed to kind of take a break. And it wasn't, I felt like he's at peace. I felt like he's finally free of this. And I didn't feel that desperate need to go find him right away. Whereas when Joey passed, first of all, you have one child pass, you pretty much feel like that's it. But the shock of it, and because of who he was as a person and that energy, I mean, he was just, he was beyond the beyond. I couldn't imagine that could be gone. I mean, that was it. And my daughters were the same way. It's not possible that he could be gone. We've got to go find it. And so it tied very closely to having those signs right away, that just kind of, jump-started that search. And, we went kind of full steam ahead with that. And we found him.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and I know you did have your, a medium reading, and we all know how healing those can be, or, they were lifesavers for me. But I'm going to read what you had written in your book about a reading.
Okay.
You said, in a reading, the boys said it was Joey's time to go. If he hadn't passed from this world in that horrific accident, he would soon. His work here was complete. This is also true in Will's case. Their paths continue somewhere else, a dimension filled with energy, mystery, and love. And as hard as it is to accept, I am slowly, very slowly coming to know this. Now, my question is, based on that, do you believe in a soul plan?
That was something I would have to say, honestly, after all of this, yes, I do. I don't think there's any other way to explain it. At first, that was a really, really hard thing for me to get my head around, and I still don't fully understand it, nor do I think that we can. But yeah, and so at first, when I read about soul plans and the idea that, certainly that we made some agreement, I was like, what? Why would I do that? First of all. And it felt almost like it was minimizing all that happened, the intensity, the love, all of it, just sort of like, well, if this is just a role that I'm in, it at first it kind of took something away from that. And then the more I thought about it, and the more I read, and the more kind of makes sense with all of this, it's like it's just the opposite. It's like that's why we experience the things that we do, is to feel that intensity, to have that connection, to create that love, and to find it again when we think it's lost, but it really isn't. And so it's helped me kind of wrap my head a little bit around it, but I can't explain that process until I think.
And that's okay. I mean, we don't tell anybody, we all have what we believe, what feels right to us.
Yeah.
I know for me, I do believe in the soul plan. This is a person who went from believing in nothing before Tyler passed to certainly not believing in that. But for me, that was that helped. It helped me tremendously. And like you said, for you, my husband was saying, well, why in the world would why would we choose this? It was almost like it would make him mad. And I said, for me, it took away that victim, because it's like, okay, there's a bigger picture. There's a reason this is helping us grow. And then you don't feel like just as much of a victim, because I also believe that we've been here many times and we create this, to grow.
Mhm.
So that made more sense to me. And, like I said, we never tell anyone what to think, but for me, it was comforting. For me, it was comforting, because I suddenly didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm one of the really unlucky ones, and why me? Because it just kind of took it to the next level. So,
Yeah.
but again, we're all different, and we certainly don't, and I guess we won't all know 100% till we get there, even though I feel like I do know. I've had my questions answered. So do you always, I know for me, it's been 8 years with Tyler, and I sense him every second. I talk to him as close as ever to him. He's with me every second, and it feels like yesterday in a way. And I used to worry about time. But actually I don't worry about that now. I know that even if I'm here for another 20, 30 years, I'm going to feel just as close to him. Do you sense your boys with you all the time?
I do. And I think it's more my, any lack of that is just my ability to focus and pay attention. But yeah, no, I know they're here. Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just get myself quiet and talk to them, and they come right in, and they're here. Yeah, they're here.
Do you feel like they're always there together?
I'm not sure about that. And it was something that I struggled with, especially with mediumship readings early on. It's like, or asking for something, it's sort of like, even, when they were little boys, it's like, you can't just get one toy for one of them. You've got to get the same thing for both of them. And I didn't want to leave one out. So it's like, I would always ask for both. I didn't want to, prioritize one over the other. I sense them differently. I sense, and I'm kind of more clairsentient. So I kind of I feel them. I have not really heard them even in my mind, except for a few times. And I haven't seen them other than kind of, that kind of dream state of floatiness. I do have the ringing in the ears all the time. I know Elizabeth talks about that, and it can really get big, especially, if I'm in something like this. But I feel them. Like I feel Joe in my forehead, and I feel Will on the top of my head. And I have to say, I think I feel Joey more, and that would make sense, because he was just, more of a communicator and more wanting to be involved in all the things. And I feel like Will, his role now with me, and I've come to respect him so much as a teacher and a mentor to me. He will come in really when I'm in some kind of like learning mode, if I'm in a class, or if I'm searching for something, or if I'm writing. He's there more. Joey's more like a let's party, he wants to be part of the family stuff. And he's made it very clear that he hangs around with his nephews and that kind of thing. So yeah,
That's
so
funny,
do they come in together? I'm not sure. I do, I do think sometimes they do, but in certain readings, depending on mediums, one will come in more than the other, depending on what they need to share, it seems.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And you get signs from them. Is there a
Mhm.
particular sign that you'll say, oh, this is Joey, or this is Will? Can you differentiate who the sign's coming from? Or
Sometimes, I will get, I think, who knows what comes first. I think sometimes those feelings and those thoughts come directly from them, and then we'll see the sign. So I will often, if I'm thinking about Will, or I'm thinking about something that even in his childhood, then I'll see something related to him, like a license plate that will have his initials, or something that is very particular to him, or a song. He's big with the songs and the song lyrics, or vice versa with Joey.
Right.
see, Joey's, pretty expert with the license plates, but I do have one, and all of that language has changed over the years. So it'll be 5 years and 7 years for my two. And at first it was like this, the big hit, sign, and this one and this one and this one. And it was sort of like they were checking boxes off. It's like, okay, you want that? Here we go. I'll give you the biggest. We're done with that now. Let's move on. And so there was that, and then it kind of got quiet, and we started this next language, a lot with the numbers and the letters. But the one constant that I've had is I have this little light in my kitchen. It's an IKEA, like one of those solid state lights that never dies. And it'll flicker, and it'll flicker a lot. When I come home and I turn it on, I'll get a little hello, or if there's something going on and I really am desperate to talk to him, it'll really go. And I tend to believe that's both of them. I don't think it's one or the other, but that's been, and it just thrills me every time.
Absolutely.
Thrills me every time.
Absolutely. And you're right. Early on, the signs are so powerful. I mean, they're working so hard, just like desperate to try to say, I'm here, you just knock you down the steps kinds of signs. But then, for me, it's the number 11. I mean, every time, and I'm not even asking for signs now because I know he's here, but it's just like and constantly look at my phone, look at anything. It's the number 11 all day long. And so I'm always like, hi, Tyler, he's reminding me, but they know we don't need those big signs, but they constantly want to let us know that they're there with us, especially because we think about them every second. I mean, all the time. They're always on our mind.
Absolutely.
One of the chapters you talk about, one of the first things you say is trust. And trust is a big word for me because I won't get into that, but that was something that was important for me early in my journey. So do you want to talk a little bit about trust and what you mean by that? And
I think that it's one of the key things, right? I mean, if we can learn to trust what we know in our heart to be true, but others may not. If we can learn to trust what we've learned without, we need some kind of constant reinforcement sometime. I'm like everybody just waffle in self-doubt all the time. Is that really true? Am I really reading this correctly? And I think for me, it was a little bit about getting past some guilt, especially around Will, and his passing, because the day that he passed, I knew that he had relapsed, and we were going to talk about it later. And I was at a workshop that day, and he was home, and we were going to talk, and we were going to do whatever we need to do to get him back on track. And I left, and I was gone for most of the day, and that's when he relapsed, and I was the one to find him. And it's the whole, well, if I had not gone, or had I come home earlier, or if I had done A, B, C, and D, maybe he'd still be here. And I had to move past that. Along with that, however, during that day, it was uncanny. I had this incredible feeling of peace, and like everything was going to be okay. And at the same time that this overdose was happening, I was feeling perfectly calm and like, oh, we're going to work this out, and he's going to be fine, and it's all going to be good. And that's so not how I would normally respond to the situation. To come home to that, and I have had direct communication from him through mediums that no, that was kind of him letting me know that he was going to be okay, and that I could trust that it was his time, and it was not anything that I could have changed in any way. That was it, and then to realize that it was the perfect timing for his life in so many ways, and I kind of go into that in the book. But that trust, and I know, so many mediums and all of us talk about that, is to be able to trust our heart as to what, that our feelings and our connections are the truth for us.
Absolutely. Do you meditate, Nancy?
Oh, I'm terrible. I many years of New Year's resolutions, that has been the one, I'm going to do it, get up every day. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not a real great routine person. I do try to it's kind of hit or miss. Walking meditation, yes, I do a lot of walking, and I try to clear my mind. Try to take time during the day and briefly clear my mind. I think meditation would be a really great tool for me to dedicate myself to and really find something that works. Lately, it's just been before I get out of bed, really just taking the time to think about the day and really get centered and look internally. And so far, I've been able to do that for a little while, but I'm not great with that.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, meditation is anytime we can just like stop the chatter in our head. And like you said, I mean, you do yoga every morning. That's a form of meditation. And, it's a moving meditation or walking in nature. So it doesn't have to be, sitting there and it's just stopping that, just stilling your mind to let them come in and feel them. And I just noticed that when I still my mind more, I feel like that's when I'm constantly hearing Tyler. I mean, he's constantly, I hear him anyway, but I do a lot of yoga by myself. Even I do a lot of walking and get out in nature when it's not 120, that is. But even in my pool, I'll get in the pool late at night when it's dark, and I'll just float and look at the moon. And it, even that, because people will say that they can't meditate, but it doesn't have to be just laying, sitting there with your eyes closed. So what are some of the things that have helped you, on tools that you have used on your healing journey?
Okay, so I had the privilege of speaking to the Minneapolis group a couple of weeks ago about this very thing. And so we spoke about tools. And when I was kind of putting together this little talk, I really had this thought that, okay, there are tools and then there are gifts. And some of the things that I thought were tools were really gifts. And I would have to say that the biggest tool of overarching tool is an open mind, and being willing to entertain new ideas and new things coming, and just look into it and go down the rabbit holes and really take what's coming with a real openness. And then all of these gifts come and they become tools. And by that, I mean the books and the people and the yoga and the Helping Parents Heal meetings, that somehow you find them. And it's all, but for me, it kind of all stems from that one decision to just have an open mind about all of this and ask the question, what if this is all possible? And then it kind of all falls into place. And then I would say that the other tool that I think is really important is helping other people. And anytime that I do that, it hugely helps me. It's healing for me. I think that's probably true. We all know that. And
Yes.
so yeah,
And you are
they're
caring
yeah.
listener. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, you've written so many, there's so many beautiful poems in your book. So why don't you share a few of them with us, and then we'll see if anyone has any questions.
Well, thank you. I'll just read a couple. But I was going to read this when I was talking about Will and Joey. I wrote this, and it's actually in my Helping Parents Heal, my little dedication to him. And I made up a word. It's called Joeyful, Joeyful. And it is a definition similar to joyful or full of joy, but better by virtue of adding an E. Expands joy to include energy, exuberance, excitement, enthusiasm, effervescence, and to be full of joey is enhanced joy. In other words, joyful is the best feeling ever. And that really speaks to who he was. Yeah,
That's beautiful.
thank you. And then I'll just read two short ones here.
Yes. And maybe tell us a little bit about, what all of a sudden, when you write these poems, is it something that just suddenly you come across these beautiful ideas and you just write them, or is it a work in progress?
Most of the good ones, I must say, just come, because I don't think they're not coming from me. I'm absolutely convinced that the writing and the paintings, I'm just a conduit. It just comes. And it's sort of like when Susan Ken, for instance, says, I think there's a book here. And I say, okay, it's like, okay, ready to go. And the ideas just flow. And at poetry, I would never have in a million years thought that I could even write one. And the ones that are good come like that. I mean, they're really instant. The ones that I really have to struggle with, yeah, maybe not so much, but they're very quick and they come, fast. So this is the exception. So this next one is called Ready. And this one I did struggle with, and I think it's because I wasn't quite sure what I was doing with it, but it turned out okay. So Ready. It won't be easy. Etching the diamond facade calls for a tool of exquisite sharpness, a steady hand. The word open, to be inscribed carefully, winding between keepsakes, left there, now embedded. Offerings from those who circled just close enough to imagine what might have been. Dust settled, lost layers silenced. There is work to be done. It's possible once again to enter the portal through the mother heart, into the light, into the love, beyond place, beyond all time.
So beautiful. Is there do you want to find one more that's to read?
Sure, one more, and this is,
Okay.
I hope we all get to this place, and because this is truly where I am, and it's such a gift. And it's called To Choose. I choose to listen for the wisdom of birds, to watch cloud portraits emerge, shift, to swell with the beauty of branches black against silver, to pull on a hope thread, to gaze upon lake waves and imagine you swimming, to grasp at fading dream whispers, to follow silent nudges betraying a presence, to know we are more, to know we are more. Thank you.
I love that. And her book is so beautiful. I highly recommend Rainbow Hair. It's got beautiful poetry, and it just kind of goes through her journey. Does anyone have any questions? Lynn, did you have any questions for Nancy? I mean, you know Nancy so well. But did you have any questions that you'd like her to share with anyone?
No, I think you both did a lovely job. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And I especially loved that last poem.
Oh, it's beautiful. I loved it when I read it. I thought it's just beautiful.
And your open mind tool, I mean, that really resonates with me. And if we could all just choose to open our mind tonight and let our kids in.
Absolutely. And Nancy, you have some messages here. We have, let's see, Beta says, I love that. I love your book. Let's see, Daryl and Kelly say thanks for sharing. The talk was very helpful. Claire O'Brien says so beautiful. So anyway, well, we are actually there's a question here. Let's see, I just noticed it. Okay, it says, can you talk about how painting has helped you with grief?
Okay. All right. Well, I think anytime you're getting anything inside out, it helps. Anytime you can kind of lose the sense of time and become part of a process, it helps. because that's really when you can be open to all kinds of things. So I don't, painting for me was just really an exploration of ideas early on. And then after, I guess it was really after Will passed, I started to, it was more of a looking back. And I started to incorporate a lot of photographs into paintings and drawings as a way of kind of memorializing them. And they became this nostalgia series. And that was really helpful. Like it's like taking a photo album and painting it into into something visually that can hang on your wall. And I get to look at them, and there they are. They're not in a book. They're they're on the wall. And so that was really helpful. And also to kind of sort through some of Will's struggles with some painting. And I think just creating in general, and like I said, just kind of losing yourself in a process, not even worrying about the outcome necessarily, is a very healthy human thing. I mean, I think we all have, everybody's creative. We all have our arts, but for me, painting has done a lot of that for me.
Well, thank you so much, Nancy. We really appreciate you. I'm going to ask everyone to unmute so they could say goodbye, and then it will be recorded. So parents that haven't been able to attend will be able to, keep watching it on our YouTube channel.
Thank you so very much.
Everyone wants to unmute. Let me and say
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Carol.
Nancy.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thanks, everybody. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Bye.
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 Bye.